Are you ready for some professional yapping? Well, buckle up. My name's Crix, and I just spent close to 500 hours playing Ashes of Creation. I've experienced its highs, its lows, its challenges, and pretty much everything inside this absolutely massive world. From epic world boss battles to intricate crafting systems that set this game apart from pretty much everything I've ever played, I've seen all that Intrepid pretty much allowed us to see with their game. They've had these test servers going on the weekends, then last month, they just left the servers on pretty much forever, with obviously bringing them down to update them and whatnot. And I decided that this was the perfect time to halt every single thing I'm doing in my life to DJ in this game as hard as I possibly could to see if one, I like it, and if I did, two, I would make content on it. Well, you know what happened because here I am. Like, I'm not even kidding. Look at this. I'm a full-time streamer that usually streams 6 days a week, and I literally haven't streamed one single time in over a month. Like, I am completely addicted to this game. No shame. It's absolutely crazy. To start, I'm in the guild Envious, and many of us just absolutely no-lifed and tested quite literally everything that there was to be tested, and it was a blast. While there was a large part of the game out, only 6 classes were available, and some systems were not in the game or even close to implemented yet. Thus, not everything could be tested. However, there was still so much to do, and as you can tell, it kept me really, really busy. So yeah, this was my first of hundreds of videos about Ashes of Creation that I plan to do leading up to its 2035 release date. All right, maybe not 2035, but come on, you know we got a while till this game's coming out. And if it's anything like what we've been playing, brother. Now, in this video, I'm going to go over my journey through my hundreds of hours of playing Ashes of Creation, as well as my thoughts and concerns with the game in this early state. I'm not going to go into too much detail on some topics simply because you've heard them all before from other content creators covering all the Ashes news, like whatever the problems were and the other news. This video's purpose is entirely different. I've done pretty much everything that was open to testing, which is a good chunk of the game. I've leveled for far too long, for far too many times, which we'll talk about in length in a little bit. I've cleared all of what they're calling dungeons. I defeated 3 world bosses, including that beautiful dragon that they showcased, and I've one-shot far too many unfortunate souls in PvP, while also getting my cheeks clapped out as well. I've got a lot to talk about, and this will be a very, very, very long video, so please use the timestamps to go ahead and just skip to whatever section that you want to listen to, okay? But I suggest just listening in order, as I have the video segments out in kind of like what your character progression would be, like leveling, and then I talk about gearing, and PvE, and PvP, and so on and so forth. If you have any questions or you want to know more information about something, just leave a comment down below, or jump in my Discord or the stream and just ask away. Links to all that in the description below. I promise you that this is the only video that will be this long. All the other ones will be done in nice digestible videos like a sane human being, okay? Also, at the end of the video, I'll link some trusted content creators who have been making videos for years at this point with some amazing information in it, as well as some tips and stuff for like Alpha 2 launch if you're playing it. Now, 2 massive things to keep in mind, however, before we start. The first one is that everything I'm about to say can change. What I did was a whole lot of testing, and that's exactly what it was, testing. So if I say that my Firebolt did 300 damage, for example, and then you go inside the game on Alpha 2 on Friday, and then they change the name to Fire Blast and it does 250 damage, don't bite my head off, okay? A lot of this game will change as we go along, and they've been changing it a ton over the past couple months, okay? The second thing is about the NDA. Unfortunately, while the verbal NDA has been lifted a couple hours ago, I cannot show any footage from the NDA testing, as you guys probably already know. They have a bunch of watermarks and stuff all over it, so if I show footage, they'll know, and I don't know what they do, but I don't want to find out. So, because I can't use footage, I've gone through and clipped different parts of the separate showcases that Intrepid did that you guys have seen, I don't know, 15,000 times over the years, so I can try to spice it up and like let you see what I'm talking about, if that makes sense. And then on Friday, when Alpha 2 comes out, I'll obviously have my own footage, and then that'll be a lot easier to make the videos better, rather than using this exact same videos and clips and screenshots that everybody has seen the whole time, okay? Now, let's begin by talking about bugs. But I won't spend too much time on them, simply because there was a lot of bugs, just as much as you think there would be with a game this far away from release, and I went in expecting that, so it honestly didn't bug me. See what I did there? So there's no point in me ranting on about how the character creator didn't work, or about the Artisan system not working, or whatever the long list of bugs were, because I'm sure you've already heard about all those issues from the other people who've been making Ashes videos lately. We had an Intrepid meeting just this morning where they said that they successfully fixed somewhere, I think they said like 1,800 bugs. So they're working on them. But yeah, there's a lot of bugs. I've tested many games over the years, and I am a World of Warcraft main, so I'm immune to being upset over the server issues and queues. Okay, well, of course there'd be times when I'd be fully tilted when I'd get teleported back to the city I just ran 15 minutes on foot to get to, or I disconnect mid-fight and then I log into being dead, which gives me my experience debt. There were plenty of bugs and exploits that were out there during the testing. I would say like 70-80% of the people that were leveling during the testing were all abusing bugs, including myself, that made mobs stand still. And you could solo anything as long as you get it to stand still. The most efficient way to level as a solo or a duo player was to use this exact same method to a mob like 9 levels higher than you, as well as it being a 3-star enemy. And then you'd get a huge chunk of experience that you would never in your life get if it wasn't bugged out. As an example, at level 20, I was soloing these like ashen humanoid mobs by Steel Bloom that were like 3-starred and meant to be killed with a group of at least 4 or 5 at this level. And they would easily one-shot me if they touched me. However, all I had to do as a mage was keep them slowed with my Frostbolt, blink away when he gets close, and there was a very particular spot I could run him over, and then as soon as he'd get back to that spot, he would just stop in place and he'd just run in that same spot. Then I'd just sit there and attack him for exactly 2 minutes and 47 seconds if I use my optimal single target rotation. I sat there for 2 days straight from level 18 to 21, literally just doing that. And it was the most XP I could get at solo, at least. Obviously, it would have been faster in the group. The XP range was anywhere from 18k per kill at level 18 to 11k per mob at level 20. And just for comparison, the normal mob you'd be killing at your level with no stars was like 600 experience or something at that time. And to drive that point home, you needed 1,324,000 experience to get from level 20 to 21. And I was getting 11,000 experience fighting these bugged out mobs. So do the math on how long it would have taken for me to level if I couldn't have bugged these mobs out, you know? By the way, this was only one example of many different leveling spots and mobs that you can do this in. Most people who were seriously leveling were abusing the same kind of bugs within the server meshing, just in the lower zones since they didn't know about the higher level bug spots or they couldn't kite it like a mage could. A lot of these bugs have since been tested and fixed, but that also means the leveling time will be significantly slower because in the example I gave you, my XP per hour was like 18 times the amount of what it would have been if I was farming the proper same level no start enemy. But yeah, I'm not going to go too much more into bugs because my job here isn't to shit on the game, but I'm also not here to glaze the game either. I'm just here to give you my honest opinion after playing the game for as long as I have, and I think ranting about the problems and bugs that the game's had is a waste of time, especially when a lot of them were already fixed over the testing period and will assumingly and hopefully be fixed over time. I'm sure you will have no problems finding any other videos on YouTube to complain about the problems that the game's having right now. Just won't be me. However, in terms of Alpha 2 starting Friday, set your expectations low and you won't be disappointed. I think Alpha 2 will be an absolute IBS dump of a shit show, but hopefully it gets worked out fast and turns into a beautiful shit show. I still had a ton of fun playing once I learned out how to play around the bugs, and I'm really excited to play Alpha 2, and there's no doubt in my mind that I'll have a blast, okay? But there were some funny bugs, like whenever you're on your mount, if you press your walk keybind and then jumped, your horse would do like some weird demonic, like exorcist, like weird, I don't know how to explain what it was doing. I kind of hope that it's still in the game on Friday so you can see it because it was hilarious to me. And the whole guild would just mount up and do that creepy horse jump every time we'd kill someone in PvP. Absolutely peak hilarious. I love it. There was another much more annoying bug that sometimes you'd get off your mount and you wouldn't be able to move and have to unstuck or log out, which would teleport you back to the beginning of the game, no matter where, like, it does not matter where you were at. And then you have to run all the way back to where you came from just for like more than likely it to happen again. Or the legendary bug where you'd walk to the other side of the world, whatever, for whatever reason, you're exploring, you're killing mobs, you're just having fun, you're doing whatever, just to touch the wrong piece of grass, bug out, and it teleports you all the way back to the beginning of the game. Needless to say, many Alta 4s have happened over that. Wait a minute. I just said I wasn't going to rant about bugs, and now here I am bitching about bugs. All right. Before getting into the meat of it, there were some activities in the game I did not do too much of because they were either bugged or just wasn't worth my travel time to do the event. Therefore, I won't speak on those topics much. Look, and don't call me lazy for not wanting to run there. There was so much traveling in this game, and when I'm buckled down in mob grinding experience in a group, I'm not trying to stop what I'm doing to go run all the way across the world of Era to go do whatever that event is, just for maybe that event to be bugged, which they were a lot of the times, or have the chance of getting the teleport bug when I'm crossing over the meshing, or any of the other bugs, right? This will change on live servers, obviously, when the more the bugs get flushed out, but yeah. While we're testing, nah. A great example of this is the Caravans. I did a few Caravans so I could experience it, of course, but half the time when I first started, they were bugged out. Like we'd spend an hour or so transporting the caravan, fighting off all the players for us just to get to the end part and it bug out and we can't finish it. So after wasting hours of my time trying to experience the caravan, I gave up. Then not long after that, they pushed a patch that fixed the caravan system. But by then I was in that mindset I just talked about where I'm not going to stop doing my mob grind thing to go all the way over here. But it was fun outside of it not finishing when it did. You pretty much transport a caravan that you can deck out and make it faster, stronger and whatnot. And you have to transport it safely from your node to another node on foot. Well, you can be on horse, but the caravan base speed is so damn slow at first until you upgrade it. So you might as well just be walking. But yeah, just kill the players along the way and hope they don't kill you or they get your stuff. Or you can kill them and take their stuff. This was also the best gold farm as well, outside of the gold exploits. But money wasn't really an issue while testing that much. You get a lot of glint off enemies, which you can just vendor. But yeah, that's about all I can speak on the topic because like I said, I didn't delve too much into it and I don't want to mislead you. Next up, professions or artisans. I didn't do much of those at all, as in I didn't do any of them, anything at all with it. Outside of the basic starting crafting quest that gives you a free horse for a mount, this is in large part due to artisans being pretty buggy at first, and I didn't have the patience to do it at the time because it's very time consuming in itself when it's not bugged out, let alone when it is bugged out. But even after Intrepid pushed a patch that perfected the gathering professions, I still didn't really go out and deal with it because, like I said, it was extremely time consuming. Plus, I've never really been into the gathering, crafting, building parts of these types of games unless I have to. I personally just prefer leveling, getting into the end game, get stronger, get more gear, kill monsters and other players. However, I did gather a ton. It just wasn't necessarily for artisan stuff. Early game is the only time money is actually kind of hard to come by, like very early levels up to level 6. And in this early game, there's a vendor in the main city that you'll start with that sells very strong weapons and armor for your level. Like it'll carry to like level 10 or something unless you find gear. You'll find gear in the world that's better, but like vendor wise, right? However, they cost like anywhere between 8 to 10 silver per weapon. So a good idea is just to farm a ton of trees, ores, pick some plants, and just go vendor them. They were all vendoring at the time for 5 copper for each stack of 5, so it adds up pretty fast. I would 100% suggest spending like 10-15 minutes farming these materials just to vendor them so you can get both your main hand and your ranged weapon right away, as they're super powerful until level 10. And then you can do the same thing to farm money up for your level 10 weapons and armors as well when you get to level 10. For example, as a mage, I'd buy a great spell sword for my melee weapon slot, and I'd buy a wand and a focus, which are my main hand, and my offhand for my ranged slot. A super secret tip that people will find out pretty quick, but probably don't know about it yet, is that there's a smithy located on the map west of the starting city. He sells the same copper weapons that the starting place has, right? But for like half the price. The only issue is that they don't have wands, books, or focuses, so mages, clerics, and bards have to go to the starting city to buy them. But the physical classes can go to the smithy and save a ton of silver. And while you guys are the vendor, you can make sure to stock up on rations, which is what you use to replenish your health and mana outside of combat. You can also go one step further. Which I would suggest again, and go to the laboratory, which is located on the map east of the starting city, and buy a consumable called fruit salad that you eat, and when you finish eating the whole thing, it buffs your magical power by 12, 10, 11, 12, and there's even a physical power one called fresh salad or something like that. Next up, I want to talk about classes. Now, I have very limited knowledge on some classes, as I've only leveled a shit ton of mages and a ranger to like level 12 or something like that. So while I know pretty much all there is to know about mages, or the current state of mages at least, I don't know much about all the other classes yet, and all my information on them came from some super sweaty guildies with more hours in the game than even I have. So I can lightly touch on them and how they're doing, but if you're watching this and have experience playing any of these classes and want to chime in, please just leave a comment down below so others can see the different perspectives. There were 6 classes available for testing: the tank, cleric, bard, ranger, fighter, and of course, my favorite class that I'm obsessing over right now, the mage. There was a cap of level 25 that took about 100 and 120 hours to get to, and that's with testing out other grind spots along the way to see what gives the most XP per hour. You have your entire skill tree, and I believe once I got to like level 17-ish, I had enough points to have all my main damage spells with my important utility, so progression on getting new spells felt absolutely fantastic. All the classes synergized really well together, but some classes like fighter and mage, tank and cleric, bard and anything just feels like the dynamic duo. To briefly touch on them, starting with mage, which I have a lot to say about, but I'll try to keep limited about the classes in this video because I'll have an in-depth class guides on the channel within the coming weeks. But mage felt absolutely fantastic, and it looks stunning. Mages are easily the best DPS in the game. I was watching some YouTube video the other day where he was trying to say that mage was ass, and it felt horrible. And I wish I could have reached through the monitor and slapped the shit out of him, because that was such an L take. And if the guy who made that video happens to be watching, you know who you are. Get better at the game before shitting on classes. Objectively, in the right hands, mages have superb single target damage and unparalleled AoE thanks to the amazing abilities they gave us. Shatter, which if you played World of Warcraft is pretty much the same thing as the Frost Mage over there, except in Ashes, it procs when you hit a frozen target with a lightning spell, which makes so much more sense in the way WoW does it, right? And it does an insane amount of damage, man. Your single target spells like Firebolt, Fireball, Frostbolt, Lightning Strike, they all crank and all have linked talents that make them do decently more damage, and some even turn them from single target abilities into AoE abilities. And speaking of AoE, Intrepid definitely followed the MMO mage trend of dominating AoE. We have 10 different ways to AoE, literally. Some of them are extremely powerful, like Ball Lightning, which wasn't always working on the testing, but when it was working, it does extremely high damage and applies volatile to all enemies hit, which reduces their magical mitigation by 50%, making all your spells do more damage. Magma Field erupts when you put it down, turning that spot into literal lava, setting everything inside the area on fire, dealing very high burning damage, as well as the Magma Field dealing separate damage on its own. Plus, there's another skill called Pyromania that makes that Magma Field cast time faster and ticks 2 extra times. It's pretty sick. Chain Lightning was absolutely cracked when it was working, which it still to this day is not working, so hopefully they fix that before tomorrow or the next day. When paired with its linked talent, Aftershock, casting Chain Lightning on a target that has the stagger debuff on him causes your Chain Lightning to trigger twice, which when paired with the Shatter talent we talked about, takes it to the next level. You see what I'm talking about? It's crazy, man. One of my favorite things about the mage was my talent choices going from PvE to PvP. You're able to use pretty much the same talents when swapping quickly to PvP. This is really nice because many times you'll be PvP'd while in the open world, like all the time, to the point where I'd suggest other classes build their character to be pretty defensive in talents that will help you in PvP situations, because it is an open world PvP game. However, Mage had so much crossover that it felt flawless, which is important because while yes, right now they're letting us respec for free on the skill tree, it won't be like that for the actual game. And in terms of PvPing, I don't think there's anything that beats a Mage in a straight up 1v1. And in terms of PvPing, I don't think anything beats a Mage in a straight up 1v1. I've heard Rangers talk all this shit about manhandling mages and how good clerics are at 1v1s, but I've never had an issue dealing with any of these classes in a 1v1 scenario in the slightest. I've of course died. I've not won every battle I've fought, but bro, it rarely happens. With absorb shields and slows and blinks and dots and shatters and more, enemies can barely even touch me. Rangers feel the most deadly against a mage, and a very good ranger will give me a run for my money. But unlike when you're playing against the other classes where you're trying to outrange them and kite them and stuff like that, you can't do that to a ranger because they're faster than you, they jump. You're not going to outrun a ranger, right? So just nut up and slam in their face and then you're fine. You know what I mean? That's the problem people have with rangers, is they're trying to run from them and they're shooting while they're running. Like, you're not going to get away. Stop. Turn around and burn them. And even though other DPS classes like fighter and ranger have extremely high burst as well, I'm not shitting on their DPS, right? Mages just have a massive absorb shield and can range you before you even get your abilities off, right? So trust me, I'll get my whole entire opener on you before you even deal damage to me. Lastly, as you can imagine, leveling as a mage was as easy as ever. One of my mages I leveled purely solo just so I can get a good judge on how it felt, which, as you'll learn in the leveling section, is giga slow. But even solo, you have no problems fighting mobs that you can kite with slows and whatnots. You'll have absolutely no problem finding groups for leveling parties since nothing comes close to a mage's AoE. And to top it off, mages can do the big AoE pulls with ease because we have an absorb shield, roots, and the ability to blink out. So we can actually gather the mobs and blink out of there if your tank's being a little pussy, you know? All in all, I love mage, if you can't tell. And in my opinion, it's the clear winner of the testing. Am I biased? 1,000,000,000% yes. Yep, 100% I am. And I don't care. Now we'll talk about your ranged partner in crime, the Ranger, which is by far the weakest of all the DPS classes when it came to the testing. Both in single target and AoE situations, the damage was just significantly lower than both fighter and mage, by a long shot. The scaling for Ranger feels way worse than every other class. However, you can do some crazy damage that even rivals the mage if it's in the right hands, and only if you have the right group comp and the group set up catering for you to do that damage, which is one of the main complaints that the pro Rangers have. The Ranger skills lack the synergy that other classes have, as well as the abilities just don't hit that hard, or they just didn't work half the time you press the ability. I'm looking at you, scatter shot! That shit never fucking works. You have a horrible marking system that all shares cooldowns with each other, and to be honest, a lot of these skills and abilities just are very lackluster, with only like 3 or 4 abilities actually being good and just some pillar talents never working, and they still don't work. The Ranger community seems rather upset with the current state of Ranger, and I can see why. That being said, let me tell you about Ranger from what very little time I played one. I spent a couple days in my youth playing one and got it to level 12, so not that high at all. But from my perspective, it was actually so much fun, and the pro Rangers even admit that after they stop ranting about how mad they are about the Rangers. The animations are phenomenal, amazing, second only to the mage spell animations. Rangers also are the only class with vertical mobility, meaning that you can literally get to places no one else can get to you and snipe them. You can be on a main road and do it up the mountain. Your snipe PvP mode is crazy. It's cracked. They did a fantastic job with the Archer fantasy, and it's definitely there. And of course, the class could use some help, but really, I had a lot of fun playing it. Whereas the fighter, I made it to level 4, and then I ulted forward and deleted the character and never went back. The ability barrage and the weapon combos feel fantastic, look fantastic, and the bow animations for the short bow is easily the best Archer type animation I've ever seen, and I get a pure hit of dopamine every time I see it. Rangers have an ability called Lightning Reload, which is a ton of fun. The spell simply resets the cooldown of some of your other abilities. This adds variety to what you do with your burst, which I loved. Oftentimes I would use the ability Sniped, which is a hard-hitting ability, but thanks to another talent, you gain 20% attack speed for 5 seconds after you snipe, which synergizes well with another skill called Barrage that you start the game with. Then, being able to Lightning Reload and snipe again on single target, or an AoE, you have Thundering Shot or an advanced scatter shot that you can use. Then Lightning Reload that to get that off cooldown and immediately AoE again. All in all, I'm not going to judge Ranger based on the testing because Intrepid said that they would buff Ranger at some point. So fingers crossed, because this is my second favorite class out of the playable ones. Next up is the Almighty Fighter. Solely focused on the melee gameplay, and they did a fantastic job at making it look and feel like what you would imagine a powerful warrior would feel like if they charged in, yelled zug zug, and clapped people out. Fighters are excellent in all aspects of DPS, whether that be single target, cleave, or AoE. Obviously, just like the other classes, you shine brightly in group combat, but even solo, fighter is nice and cozy. Of course, you're not going to be able to kite high-level mobs like a mage can, but you're more than able to successfully level solo in the open world. PvE as a fighter feels familiar if you've ever played as a melee in any other MMO in the past 10 years. As melee, you'll need to learn the mob attacks and generally stay behind enemies that are being tanked. Shocker. You are very strong in AoE by mid-game and your single target is decent. This is largely due to the sustained DPS of your weapon combos. Like most other DPS in the game, fighters must learn to weave between spell casts and weapon combos. Learning to balance this will lead you to mastery of the class. Fighters are also strong when you simply use your bows at range. If you engage with the target at range, you can apply numerous status effects and debuffs, then charge in and really pump out your damage. In terms of PvP, fighters bring some excellent utility to the table, and you simply cannot be passed up for battling against other players, right? You have hard CC, soft CC, healing debuffs that can be stacked on enemies. Once your wound stacks are placed, you can freely burst on your target. When your health drops too low, Blood Infusion is there to save you as well. Despite having this great utility, fighters don't feel like they have their full identity solidified. What I mean by this is the APO feels clunky. For example, moving from skill to skill and combo to combo. It's possible that you just need more attack speed, but I also think you could benefit from some spell reworks to really shine in PvP. Fighters have many tools to help you survive when you're out in the world, but one of the unique fighter-only resources is called combat momentum. This is generated by certain abilities and weapon combos, and you also generate momentum while in combat. With this momentum, you receive large stat gains and also use this resource to get passive power gains to your character based on which form you're in. Now, I've never played a fighter, and this is my least knowledgeable class outside of the tanks, but this reminds me a lot about the rage mechanic from World of Warcraft, kind of, except for you're kind of dumping rage more in WoW, and it doesn't seem like you're doing that as much here. And the forms remind me of stances from WoW. I know they're not the same, but from a simple-minded caster perspective, looks the same to me. I do intend to level a fighter all the way up as one of my alts. I literally always play casters, but Intrepid did a very good job with the way the fighter looks, and it convinced me to play one. I'm still debating on whether to go ranger or fighter for my second character after my mage. I'm just not sure yet. But yeah, that's all I want to say about the fighter because I don't know that much about it and I don't want to mislead. This goes for tank as well. I couldn't tell you one thing about the tank class outside of the fact that they tank and that they're extremely hard to kill in group PvP. Tanking is the most boring thing in the world to me, and I've never tanked in an MMO before, and I don't plan to. However, I do know that Nice Gaming and I think Richie SR or something like that have had a lot of experience with tanking, so just go ahead and check them out, and they've been both posting frequently and talking about all this stuff too. Also, if you're watching this and have experience as a tank, please leave a comment on your opinion on the tank, and you can help people out watching this who know about tanks. So if you're watching this as you're a tank, just go look for that comment somewhere. Now on to Clerics, which is the main healer and our god tier PvPers in solo and group content. The general consensus amongst the community is that Clerics are OP. You're extremely strong at lower levels and able to still keep people alive even when underleveled and undergeared. Your DPS as a cleric was surprisingly good, especially considering healers typically don't do that much damage in MMOs, but in Ashes, clerics will give you a run for your money, and if you're not careful, bro, or you're sleeping on them just because they're healers, you will be sadly mistaken and turned into a pile of ashes quick, bro. Like, don't sleep on clerics. Clerics are also the only class currently that can resurrect, and you can resurrect in combat as well if you didn't know. This doesn't mean that you need to wait for a res every time you die because it costs a shit ton of mana to res, and the cleric will need the mana mid-fight. I typically only wait for a res if my res point is really super far away. Like one of the world bosses we were fighting is all the way up there by Crag Peak, and there's no res point by them, so that's a perfect example. If I ever get clapped out on that, I just wait for a res, because it would take me like 15 minutes to run back up there. As you can imagine, clerics are not only the main healers, but also support the party by bringing very strong buffs and debuffs. One thing that all clerics will need to get used to is something called Blessed Weapon. This is unlocked through your skill tree, and then you put it on a friendly player, and then whenever that friendly player auto attacks, they get mana back. However, there's another talent that's linked with that and complements that further and gives you mana back as well whenever they auto attack. This is massive, and you're going to have a lot of people in your party asking for this because there's many times that you're not able to sit and eat a ration to get your mana back. Whether you're mob grinding XP, which is just chain pulling mobs nonstop as long as you can without taking a break, or fighting a world boss that takes over 10 minutes to kill, or a long drawn out group PvP fight. However, on the note of mana, it feels plenty in this game as long as you're utilizing your spells correctly. I can't speak from that perspective of everybody else. All I know is clerics complaining about reses being costly on mana. Mage mana feels great unless you're just slamming AoE abilities down. They cost the most mana, you know? All in all, I've not heard too many complaints about the cleric. Now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever heard a complaint about the cleric. Really, that's kind of crazy. Well, I'm sure there are bugs with the class. I'm actually really not heard of too many negatives at all, which is a great thing this early in development, in my opinion. Now we just gotta hope they don't like try to tweak with it for some reason and then they ruin the class, right? Next up, the Bard, which is one of the most important members of your group, supplying you with powerful buffs that range from damage increase to the parties, extra healing, mana, dispel, absorb, damage reduction, speed buffs, and pretty much everything that you could need besides a res. Playing a Bard solo, however, is an entirely different story, bro. As you'll learn in the leveling section coming up, you should not be leveling solo. Bards shine as soon as you get into a party. So if you plan to play one, make sure you check out the global chat. You'll see people looking for groups all the time, right? Bard is another class that I've not heard too many complaints about. And oh my God, they look visually amazing. Right up there with the mage, bro. They look phenomenal. But yeah, Bards are by far the most versatile class when it comes to supporting your party members with a wide variety of much needed buffs. As you can imagine, as a pure support player, your damage is lower than most people, but your job isn't really to be spamming damage. Your job is to be carrying the group by supporting them. And oh man, holy shit, you got a lot of ways to support them, bro. Outside of the generic ways to support your party like dispelling and healing and stuff like that, Bards have unique abilities to support like the skill Gambit, which lets you swap your health with someone else's, or abilities that stun or crowd control and all that stuff, bro. So much shit. In terms of PvP, Bards obviously shine in group content, but when it comes to a 1v1, you're in trouble against all the other classes, I think. But another big plus to Bards is that you have spells that affect your movement speed to make you significantly faster, so you're able to get away from literally every single player in the game, even Rangers. Bards also have a very unique system with some of their abilities that act like an entertainer would if you were to think of the lore of a bard in a fantasy world, enveloped in the art of music, stories, dance, and songs. Each of these act differently and do different things. This, in my opinion, not only sets this class apart from every other class in the game, but I've honestly never seen something like this in any game ever. It's super dope, and I think Bard mains will love it. Like I said, I've not heard too many complaints about the Bard, besides some spells occasionally not working, just as it is for all the other classes, though. All in all, from what I'm hearing from the Bards, they love it, and I'll definitely be trying one out soon. And since we're on the topic of leveling, let's just start with what everyone has to do first: level up. This is a very important aspect of the game, which is obvious because this is an MMO, but a big difference between every other MMO is the time it takes to level and the power creep and scaling of your character. Ash's leveling is purely mob grinding currently. By that, I mean literally the most efficient way by a long shot is to be in a party, sit in a field full of mobs, and grind them for hours, days even. Of course, there are hotspots on where to go to be efficient with your XP per hour, since there are not only multiple different enemies in the game, but different leveled enemies and different tiered enemies, which I will get into more later in this video. But for the sake of this topic, you can have, let's say, a bear, for example, that's level 10 with 1000 health. There's also level 10 bears with 1 star, 2 star, and 3 star, each star significantly buffing the bear's health, damage, and how much experience points you're going to gain after killing that bear. The no star basic bear will give you some super low experience. For this example, let's say 300 experience, and you'll have no problem soloing this whatsoever, maybe taking 2 of them down and cleaving them. However, that 1 star bear will give you, let's say, 1800 experience, but will cook you. So you can't solo it because you'll get 2-shot by it. The 2 star will have like 11k HP or something and give you 6k experience. A 3 star will have like 20k health and give you 10k experience. Get it? Pretty much every mob in the entire game can have either 0 stars, making it easy but give garbage experience, or have 1 to 3 stars, which you'll need help with, which adds more people to the party, thus less experience. But even with that XP loss from being in a group, it far surpasses solo leveling, and questing is not even an option at this point unless they drastically buff the XP gains from quests. I'm not even kidding. A quest gives like 1k experience, but has you running around forever just to get that 1k experience. Or you can go kill a few mobs 20 feet from that exact same spot you picked up that quest and get more experience than that quest without having to do all the running around. I hope that makes sense. I kind of ranted there. By the way, those XP and health values are just really close values to what's on the NDA servers. Everything might change as the game is in very early testing. But the point I'm trying to make is if you want to level even remotely close to efficiently during these weekend tests, it will 1,000,000% be best to do so in a group. Do not listen to anyone else you hear tell you otherwise. Unsubscribe from their YouTube channel. Unsubscribe from any YouTube channel that sits there and tells you to start the game up and go spam quests and commissions to level up. This has been tested for so long and it's not even close. I can tell you right now, the only quest we're doing is the opening quest you spawn in front of called Welcome to Vera, which leads you to your first city of Lion's Hold, and that turn-in is next to another guy who gives you a quest to go attune at the Ember Spring. And then after that, there's one more quest that's called the Sweat Off Your Brow right by him, and that's the quest that you want to do that makes your mount. This quest has you cut down a tree located behind the building that you're talking to the guy in, then turn that wood into wooden blocks, turn that in. He gives you zinc to make a pickaxe, go make the pickaxe, and then go pick granite 40 feet away from him. Turn those granite into granite blocks, turn the granite blocks back into the guy. Then he's going to send you 200 yards or something away to pick some flowers. Go pick the flowers, mill the flowers, bring them back to him. He then tells you to go bring everything you just did in a package far away. Very, very far away. But because you're going so far away, he'll give you a horse for free. So go visit a stable master located right across from that quest giver, and you'll have your mount within 3 minutes of logging into the game. 2 things about the mounts. The first one, your mount can die. If you're running on your mount and you aggro a mob and he starts damaging you, it damages your mount first. Your mount dies, goes on a 9-minute cooldown, 9 or 10-minute cooldown. Okay, it sucks. Don't let your mount die. If you aggro mobs and you know they're going to chase you for a little while, just get off your mount and kill it, or get off your mount and continue sprinting away, and then get on your mount when it de-aggros off you, okay? And you can no longer mount other people's mounts. You used to be able to ride people's mounts, which I thought was pretty cool because it's realistic, right? I can just take your mount. Like, I can just take your mount and go fuck off, and then whenever you call your mount, it just automatically kicks me off that mount, and then I'm back on foot, and then you get your mount back. It's pretty cool. By the way, the mount is in your bag. After you finish the quest, the mount will go to your bag. You can click it from your bag or drag it to your action bars. You're good to go. Damn, I really wish I could have showed you footage of me doing that. But like I said, the NDA that was lifted is only verbal, so we can't show footage from in-game. But the day the Alpha 2 drops, I'll be streaming, but I'm also going to clip it down and post it so you guys can see how to do the mount as well. But yeah, outside of that, there's only a couple of quests that are worth doing, like the Plunders and the Church of the Sevens quest, and a few more mandatory huge quests that you'll do when you get a higher level down the road. But those will generally be big quests that you not only need to be a higher level, but you need to be in a big party and sometimes a raid, because it'll have you killing mobs that are way, way, way higher than you and 3-starred, one-shotting you every single. Absolutely, you do not stand a chance. Obviously, there are some more quests that you can do. They actually have a lot of quests and commissions that are in the game. They just give you dog water experience, which, while on the topic of commissions, for those that don't know, commissions are pretty much just like a simple quest. Go kill 10 goblins, or go mine this amount of zinc, this amount of granite, kill this many bandits, etc. There is a ton of them. All the main cities have a commission board that you can just click and then select the ones you want. One super cool thing about commissions is that you don't have to run back to turn them in. As soon as you complete your commission quest that had you, for example, kill 10 goblins, once you kill those 10 goblins, you can simply open up your journal and click complete. I love that. The commissions also give god-awful experience and aren't worth it in terms of leveling efficiency. Even just the first commission board at Lion's Hold, which is where everyone starts when you create your character, gives you anywhere from 94 experience to 800 experience and has you running to the other side of Vera to do it. The only way commissions can be anywhere close to worth it, in my opinion, is if you just grab them all. And if you happen to be over there in that area and stumble upon the commission objective while leveling, then you can do it for a little bit of free experience. But they're 100% not worth going out of your way to farm up commissions. Even when the node levels up and the commissions started giving decent experience, they still weren't worth it. Well, they could buff the experience gains from commissions and quests even before starting Alpha 2, and then this whole rant would have been for nothing, but that's testing for you, rant. Oh, something huge here that must be mentioned is that there is a different type of commission called the Mayoral Commissions. These are super cool. They act like normal commissions, as in you go to a Mayoral Commission board, which is a different location than the normal commission board. This one will always be by the city hall for whatever city you're in. You can only access the Mayoral Commission board once your node progresses level 3, then the public can elect the mayor, and then that node's mayor selects those mayoral commissions to put on the board. But these are mind-blowingly better than the regular commissions. They give much more experience, better rewards, and most importantly, gives you these mayoral tickets that aren't called mayoral tickets. I don't know what they're called. They actually might be just called mayoral tickets. I don't know. But anyway, you use these for some crazy gear. This gear was the best gear that you can get at level 10, and it'll carry you easily until level 20, which is so big. Unless you get like a freak rare drop or something like that, right? I cannot express how big that is because gear is super, super important in Ashes. Gear in Ashes feels more important than any other game I've ever played in terms of leveling, and this gear will absolutely carry you. The only issue is you need a lot of materials to fill these mayoral commissions. Well, at least you did a few days ago when we were doing it. It really has you hard farming these materials for the commissions. You can have a few bags filled up and still need to go get more. But all in all, it's worth it, especially if you're a solo or a duo player. I personally like to do these when my leveling party is sleeping, or maybe early morning when I wake up with my coffee after I take the kids to school, or during our mob grinding breaks. Real quick, a little side note before I continue about leveling. I just want to let you guys know that if you do want to do commissions and quests the entire time, please enjoy that and have fun playing this lovely game however you want to play it. I just wanted to put some emphasis on how bad the questing was for those watching it that like to min-max and be a little sweaty. Enjoy the game however you want. I'm not hating on nobody, okay? Anyways, back to leveling. As I was saying, quests give very little experience, and it won't be worth leveling via questing like a typical MMO, unless they buff the hell out of experience gains, like I said, from the commissions and the quests. Get in the group and grind away, and it's not hard to find groups. You'll see people constantly posting in global chat non-stop for leveling groups. It's also very easy to start exploring. Look for enemies that have 1 star that are within 3 or 5 levels ahead of you. Look for a couple other players along the way or around you or in global chat and ask them to party up for really good experience and start grinding those mobs. I did that countless times. I would be by myself, guilds asleep, or whatever the hell it is. Everybody's in their own groups. And I would be solo by myself, get there, find some mobs, look for somebody. Hey, you want to grind this mob? They're going to say the same thing. Good experience, and they're not alone. It's the best thing in the world. Now, I know there's many of you that want to grind mobs, and that's okay, especially if you're not in a hurry. I just wanted to keep it real with you and say that your leveling will be so much slower that it's unbelievable. To put this more into perspective, on one of the weekend tests, I was one of the highest players on the server as a mage after the weekend was over, at level 20 or whatever. We leveled pretty much the most efficient way possible since our guild is way too sweaty for how far away this game is from launching, and it took us between like 90 to 100 hours of grinding mobs in different spots throughout Thera. Now, this is, of course, with us traveling to a spot and testing the XP per hour for a little and then going to the new spots to figure out a leveling meta. But all in all, we were the highest by far with, of course, other sweaty people not in our guild that were also at our level as well, but who also had groups in their own guild that were also grinding mobs similar to us. But the people who didn't grind mobs and just ran around looking for quests, doing them, returning, etc., were only level 9 and 10. To put some emphasis on how bad being level 9 and 10 is after, a day or two, our leveling route puts us at level 7 within 15 minutes of creating a character, barring any connections and waiting in queue and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I drilled that point home. Leveling takes forever in Ashes, even longer than Classic WoW, which is insane to think about, as I was a World of Warcraft main before this. Not only that, but as I said, sadly, this game isn't solo friendly in the slightest, at least for leveling. I can't speak on all the artisan stuff because, like I said in the beginning, I did literally no profession stuff. We have people in the guild who don't care about combat or PvP or PvE, and they actually only want to be dedicated crafters. So instead, I prefer to gather for them when I'm out and about, or if I need a little mental break from the mob grinding, and just supply for them. The name of the game here is teamwork, and I promise you, it makes the dream work. All right. Now, earlier I mentioned something about the power creep and scaling while leveling. Ashes is the first MMO that I can recall playing where every single level you gain mattered so much because you feel a massive power spike every single time you level. For example, let's say my Frostbolt on my mage hits for 200 damage. Then I level and now it does 350 damage. Not only that, but you gain a noticeable amount of health and mana, and of course your skill point for your talent tree and your passive skill point. When you level in Ashes, it's something you notice immediately upon leveling. Whereas in games like World of Warcraft, you get like 1 stat point to all your stats, which is 10 health, bro. And you honestly don't feel the power at that level at all. Outside of being 1 level closer to the mob that you're fighting, making you have a lower chance of missing your spells on them, which is a thing in Ashes as well. I really like this strong power creep you get per level, mainly because it takes hours to level just one time. So to be able to level up after grinding, get my new spell, and feel that much more powerful immediately upon leveling is extremely rewarding, and I wish other MMOs did the same thing. Oh, and just in case you didn't know, whenever you get a new skill from your tree, just go straight to your action bar, and you can put it wherever you want, and all your spells and abilities scale with you, making them stronger as you level. It's great. As for the time it takes to level, I don't know how I feel about it. I despise when you play an MMO and you get boosted, or it takes no time to level at all. I really actually enjoy the journey to get to max level in MMOs, as I feel like at one point when all these MMOs originally launched, the team had a dream for what it was like to go through their world for the first leveling adventure, and you would remember that forever. And it's even nostalgic for some of us returning to those older days of older MMOs, right? Not only that, but I enjoy a long leveling journey. In my opinion, it's some of the most fun in MMOs that I can have before that fresh max character gearing and crafting you do before heading out to your first dungeon, raid, or to go PvP some fools. It's also the best way to learn your class. I know not everyone thinks the same, and that's fine. We all love our MMOs for our own reasons. But if you do hate leveling and the time it takes to level, well, buckle up, buddy, because the only way around it in Ashes is to currently not play. However, my complaint with leveling doesn't lie with the time it takes, but rather with the way we're leveling. In my opinion, purely mob grinding for hundreds and hundreds of hours to get max level is an absolute horrible way to level. I sincerely hope Intrepid adds way more quests, or at least makes the quest experience more so it's worth running around and doing. Maybe add better quest rewards or something. I don't know. It doesn't need to be anything crazy, but something to help incentivize questing more. I am not saying questing needs to be the best way to level, but at least boost it up so it's closer to mob grinding than it is. Because I feel like this will be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, complaints that the community will have in the long run once all the bugs get fixed. Right now, if I had to put a progress bar on the screen to show you the difference between a group of mob grinders efficiently grinding XP versus a solo player questing or something like that, the group of mob grinders, let's say, would be at max level at 100% of the progression bar, and a solo quester would be 20% of the way through. And that's being generous. And to anyone watching who loves mob grinding and all that, the main reason I mentioned buffing quests is not for you, me, or any other sweaty no-lifers. It's for the people who don't play this game 16 hours a day. Or the people who aren't trying to deal with groups of people in PvP and stuff like that. It's the people who are just getting off work and they have a couple hours to play and they don't want to deal with having to deal with anybody else. You know what I mean? They just want to vibe out by themselves and on their own time, as I think a majority of players will be playing solo. All right. That's enough about leveling. Now let me talk briefly about something I still know nothing about because I never really paid attention to it because I was too sucked into the leveling. And that's the nodes and the node system. I'm going to be straight up honest with you guys. I have nothing to say about the node system. The only time I ever thought about the node system was when I had to register for Jova and vote on my guildmaster for mayor. Outside of that, I've done a handful of caravans, but like I said earlier, they were really buggy, and once they were fixed, I didn't care about running across the world to do it and transport it. I'll do it in Alpha 2, but I just didn't care about the NDA testing. But yeah, other than that, The only thing I really noticed about the node changes was as our node leveled up, we got new consumables. For example, the baseline food buff you can get is 12 magical power or physical power. It's like fresh salad and fruit salad. But after your node levels up, then it upgrades that. Or you can get another food that gives you more magic and physical power, or like one that gives you magical crit, one that helps the crafting out. Long list of things that you can do. There are many examples and I don't know them all, but I'm sure you can imagine how many consumables there are considering it's an MMO. There's a bunch of different food for buffs, scrolls, etc. Click them or eat your whole food buff to get the buff. But yeah, that's really all I trust myself to speak on the nodes. As I said earlier, I don't like talking about things I don't know much about because I don't like to spread false information to the community. I almost didn't even make this video just because there's so much unknown and it's ever changing, but I figured there'd be at least one person who'd watch this and I hope it helps them. All right, next up, the stats. Just like all MMOs, stats are huge. I'll have a video later where I can get my own footage and go over each of the stats one by one in game into much more detail. But for now, the gist of it is that you have 6 primary stats or attribute stats. I don't know which one they're calling it. And each point to this main stat will boost additional stats you have that they are calling waterfall stats, which just means that, for example, intellect is a main attribute for casters, and each point of intellect gives you 3 magical power, 1 magical penetration rating, and 1 magical accuracy rating. Intellect being the prime stat in this example, the magical power, penetration, and accuracy being the waterfall stat. Make sense? And I might as well go over the 5 other stats since we're here on the topic. Strength is the main stat for physical DPS, as you can imagine, and each point gives you 3 physical power, 1 physical penetration rating, and 1 physical accuracy rating. Dexterity is another main stat for physical DPS, and each point gives you 2 physical critical chance rating, 2 physical attack speed rating, and 1 physical evasion rating. Wisdom is the second main stat for casters, and each point gives you 2 magical crit rating, 2 magical casting speed, and 1 magical evasion rating. And the last 2 are Constitution, which is the main stat for everybody in the game, as this is a defensive stat. And I found that this stat was in a lot of gear more often than the other stats too. I don't know if that was just RNG or what, but each point gives you 10 max health, 2 armor, and 1 physical critical avoidance rating. Lastly is Mentality, which is one of the main stats for casters. Each point gives you 16 mana, 2 magic resist, and 1 magical critical avoidance rating. The stat sheet looks pretty dope and is different from what they showed you in the showcase, and I wish I could show you, but that's why I'll make an actual stat video and go into more detail soon. But stats can be found the normal way they're found in MMOs, on gear, or you can use consumables, as mentioned earlier, that boost your stats, enchanting, stuff like that. I know they mentioned something about a tattoo system as well to boost your stats, but that wasn't in for testing, so I know nothing about it. All right, how you guys doing? I kind of went in on that for a while about the leveling, didn't I? And to be honest, I could talk about it more, but let's segue into more about PvE, which I guess is a part of leveling since you're PvEing to level, so we don't need to talk about that aspect of PvE. But outside of that, there were dungeons and world bosses that we did, which is all the PvE content available for us to do. Combat in Ashes generally feels really good, at least from a mage and a ranger perspective, and the other classes look good, at least, as I said earlier. There was obviously bugs that made some abilities not work and stuff like that, but outside of that, I really enjoyed the combat. This game has some of the best spell animations I've ever seen, and I only play caster, so it excites me when my class is flashy and I cannot wait to see the summoner. Each of the different magical elements stood out on their own, and I never really got tired of seeing them. You see and hear lightning crack in the direction your lightning is going, and you see it charge up over your head with a super sick visual. Starting with the dungeons, which are more like POIs or point of interest that are like outdoor castles, caves, and other areas with the highest level monsters, and usually some high tiered bosses that can drop some extremely good gear. Places like the Tower of Carfin, Graves Peak, Ursine Caves, Halls of Adjudication, and more. These are extremely dangerous places, so I would not suggest going here by yourself or at a low level. Get a high level group of people and head to these spots. These are also the hot spots for some good mob grinding spots when you get up to the higher levels, and you'll find the best gear, patterns, and recipes along the way. Most of the gear you'll find from these places, and most others, including the crafted gear, are locked behind levels 10 and 20 as well. There's other gear as well that you can get, but it's like the very basic gray gear you'll get that's really bad, whereas the high gear that drops off the higher mobs will be of higher rarity, meaning it has more stats than a lesser quality will have. For example, I found the same level 10 book as the normal bronze book that you'd find, except for it was blue and not gray, meaning that was a rare quality book and not common, and it had like triple the magic power on it, plus an additional like 10 intellect that wasn't on the gray book, as well as a bunch of more magical crit. The book ended up carrying me all the way to like 20 or 21 when I finally replaced it with the wand that dropped off one of the world bosses. And while we're on the topic of world bosses, they're so sick. There were 3 world bosses in total that Intrepid put into testing, all with different phases. And after many deaths, we're finally able to not only kill them all, but have them on farm eventually. Each one has its own respawn timer, or at least it did when we were testing, as well as its own dope mechanics, some special really powerful gear, and pattern drops. The mechanics were all very unforgiving even at our level. We tried many times to kill the world bosses as soon as we were all like level 14 and 15, and it was impossible. So once we all hit level 20, we went back and it was much more manageable, but hit or miss if we killed them easily. However, once we all came back at like 22, 23, then it was much, much easier and we could even handle them without anyone dying. Unless they messed up or stood in fire, poison or something like that. As for the bosses themselves, one was called Tumok, who is this big ass ogre troll looking thing that walks around beating the shit out of your tank and everyone with this big ass tree. He does a ton of damage and will kill anyone he hits after a couple hits. The fight surprised me because going into this, I thought this was going to be a tank and spank, but there's actual real mechanics to do outside of attacking. Granted, not a ton of mechanics, but they were pretty sick and they were dangerous. I can't physically show you yet, but at one point he slams the tree down onto the ground and then shoots out a ton of these like poisonous mushroom lines on the ground that you cannot stand in or you'll die, and they cover a large portion of the battlefield. So it's very limited movement. You have to keep hitting the boss, but not his tree or his GG, while also not stepping into the mushroom lines, and then throughout the phase, he'll put out these huge ass mushrooms that your raid has to kill before the boss gets to the mushrooms, or he'll eat it and heal all the way back up. On top of that, this boss summons ghost wolves that crank, bro. So you need to prio them and group them and have your mages AoE them down while your melee DPS sit on the boss while everyone watches out for mushrooms and nukes them. And if this wasn't enough, he has no threat table during this phase, so he's just fixating on one random person and chasing them around for 10 seconds or so, then immediately swaps to the next fixated target. And if he gets close enough to you, you're cooked. And this boss in particular is nowhere near a place where you can resurrect, which in this game is called an Ember Spring. They look like little waypoints on your map and you interact with it to attune to it, and then when you die, you can choose to go there. I said choose because you can also interact with that same winter spring a second time and set your home to that spring, kind of like setting your hearthstone to that spring. This makes it so that when you die, you have the option to go to your attuned Ember Spring or your home. Or you can get resurrected, which is obviously the best thing, especially in this exact scenario, because the closest run part would have been in Africa. You can res in combat, like I said earlier, as long as there's a cleric near you. If not, you quite literally, in Tumok's example, have to run across to the furthest point north by Grave Peak to get to him. If he's still in Grave Peak. I don't know if they're going to move him or nothing like that. That could have just been where he was for the testing. I don't know what they're doing with him. But holy, if you died fighting Tumok, it was the worst thing ever, man. The run back was wild. One of the other world bosses was Firebrand, which is that massive dragon they showcased. This fight was one of the most visually pleasing boss encounters that I've ever seen in an MMO. He really didn't have a ton of mechanics, just dodge the fire circles, dodge the fire breath, dodge the tail whip, move out of his breathing path when he's in the air, you know, typical dragon behavior. But oh man, each of those mechanics looked amazing. Not just that, but they had this screen shake thing set up so whenever you get hit hard or when a boss does a big roar or, you know, a big ability or a big grand slam, in this case, when he does this huge fire blast roar ability, your entire screen shakes. Not that annoying screen shake that games had that has you speed running to the settings to turn off. It's just a very subtle, very pleasant, cool looking, you know, shake the fucking screen up, lets you know it's dangerous. It's pretty sick. And needless to say, if your pinky toe touches any of his abilities, you're cooked, brother. Literally. However, unlike Tumok's bitch ass, there's an Ember Spring you can res at literally 100 yards from the fight, which is great. And on the side note of this, I've accumulated like 60% of a level of experience on this boss. I was literally like 700,000 experience in debt at level 20 on one of my characters. At this point, each level was like 10 hours or so the deaths hurt tremendously. Oh, that reminds me. I would have totally forgot to talk about this if I didn't just rant on about Firebrand. But let's talk about what happens when you die, because it's pretty crazy. Many of you know this already, but for those that don't, when you die, you accumulate debt to your experience. Technically, you don't lose debt right when you die. Rather, it puts you in, let's, for example, 10K experience debt. Now there's a red bar covering up 10,000 experience of your experience bar, and it slowly goes down as you gain experience. There's no way around this experience debt. However, if you get res by a cleric instead of releasing back to an Ember Spring, you don't accrue as much debt. Supposedly there's a sharp 20% overall stat reduction if you ever accrue experience debt equal to 100% of your level, but I've never reached that far, so I don't know if that's true. You also drop some of your inventory, but nothing from your main bag. Instead, you drop 10 to 20% of your materials from your materials bag, which has all your resources, including your glint, which is your money in this game. Well, it's not money, but one of its main uses is to sell it to a vendor, so you really like glint. Anyway, when you die, anyone can pick up your stuff, including you. So hurry back and get your stuff if you can, unless you didn't have anything good, then whatever. Dying happens a lot. The world of Air is a very dangerous place filled with many different types of creatures and monsters that are trying to kill you. But in my opinion, the most dangerous enemy isn't the monsters, it's the players. That's right. Let's talk about some PvP. Now, PvP definitely is a major factor in this game, and there are multiple ways to engage in PvP in this testing period that all resulted in you murdering other players, which is beautiful. I'll touch on them before speaking about my experiences with it. Those type of PvP content were open world PvP, which is exactly as it sounds, normal PvP anywhere in the world. This is the most common version of PvP that you will see. This can be a simple 1v1, a 2v2, huge scale PvP group battle, but oftentimes it's just me minding my own damn business, running around or gathering something, and I get jumped by 5 people and my stuff gets stolen as they spit on my pile of ashes while teabagging me like the good old Halo days. And you heard me right. You turn into a pile of ashes when you die, which is sick. There's Caravan PvP, which is the PvP that goes on during a caravan event, obviously, whether you're defending or attacking it. Once you get close enough to that caravan, you'll see a screen pop up on the top right to the left of your minimap that is asking if you want to attack or defend it, and you just go from there. Once you are part of the caravan event, you will not receive any corruption, which I'll talk about in a minute and is very important to know about. I won't go into much detail on the caravan system, like I said earlier, since I already talked about it. Node and guild wars is exactly what it sounds like as well. 2 nodes or 2 guilds going at it. We were able to do some of these, but they were pretty unfair, to be honest, because our guild Envious is dominating the testing servers due to how many people we have and how many of us can afford to no-life these testing periods. So we never actually really got to see a good, even big fight, right? I do think these will be so much more fun when it's more of an even battle, though, between the guilds. I know there's supposed to be sieges as well, but they're not in this testing. So I can't wait to see them, though. That sounds super fun. There's lawless zones called the Tropics and the Sand Squall Desert. These are huge zones that once you enter, you will immediately be flagged and are full of not only high-tier mobs, materials, and resources, but other players looking to get those same in-game items. There's no corruption in this zone. However, you will still drop things when you die. These will be insanely super popular hotspots as this drops in-game items and resources you'll need later down the road. Now that you know the ways you can PvP, there's something extremely important in this game. Well, 2 things that need to be discussed that complement each other in a horrible way, in a very bad way, and it's the flagging system and the corruption system. When you attack somebody, it flags you for PvP, unless you were already flagged, of course, because if you press Alt F by default, it will toggle your PvP flag on and off, okay? Now, anybody in the world can attack you regardless of if you're flagged or not, okay? However, if you do attack somebody and kill them and they do not fight back, you get corruption. Corruption is a very unique and dangerous system that is meant to help keep the risk alive while significantly deterring players from griefing you, right? And oh man, it works phenomenally. When you viciously murder someone who doesn't fight back, immediately upon that player's death, you'll see a red debuff on your player frame that states that you have so many stacks of corruption. Now, just for you guys, I did this, okay? I went and spawn camped a bunch of level 1 characters at the starting city for a while just to test out the corruption stacks, all right? And yes, those level 1s were mad, but it was a necessary experiment, goddammit. And these are the exact values on the tooltips as of October 22nd. So I got my first stack of corruption after killing 2 players that did not fight me back. That first stack of corruption was 25% reduction to health, mana, and all your other mitigations, which is your defenses. You deal 25% less damage, you drop 25% more resources, and you can drop anywhere between 1 to 3 pieces of your actual gear when you die. Yes, as in your legendary weapon. And to top it off, you also get an additional 4% to your XP debt. It's crazy, guys. And this is only the first stack of corruption. At the second stack of corruption, which came after I killed 2 more players, I got 35% reduction to healing, mana, and mitigation. I deal 35% less damage, and I drop 35% more resources, as well as 2 to 3 pieces of my actual gear, and I incur 8% XP debt upon death. Oh, third stack time, which came after I killed 2 more players. It moved to 45% reduction, 45% less damage, 45% more materials dropped, 3 to 5 pieces of my actual gear dropped, and 14% XP debt upon death. At the fourth stack, which came after I killed 2 more guys, you get 65% reduction to healing, mana, and mitigation, 65% damage, 65% more drops and resources out of your bags, and another 3 to 5 pieces of your actual gear when you die, as well as you incur 20% XP debt. And the final stack, the 5th stack of corruption, which came after I killed 6 more players. I got 90% reduction to healing, mana, and mitigation, 90% less damage. I dropped 90% more materials, 3 to 6 pieces of my actual gear when you die, as well as 30% XP debt. I tried to see if I can get to rank 6, to be fair, but after 13 more kills, I wasn't able to. Oh, and the ways to get corruption, which I kind of just said, was death. Death is the best way. You lose 1 stack of corruption every time you die. You also can farm mobs to lose a stack. At least they say that you can farm mobs to lose stacks. However, I've heard other haunting creators test it, and I personally, once again, tested the shit out of this. I got a stack of corruption and then farmed 1-star mobs by myself for almost 3 hours one night, and I still never got rid of that 1 stack of corruption. And on kind of a funny side note, when I finally died after testing that example of camping the level 1s, I spawned back at the main town Emberstring where guards were everywhere because it's a town, right? And they spawn camped me 4 times until I lost all my corruption stacks. And something more interesting about that, if you remember what I said about the corruption stacks, you know, even at rank 1, you're losing 1 to 3 pieces of gear, right? If you're at rank 4 or, 3, where you're losing 3 to 5, You're dead, you die, you lose 1 stack. Now you're at rank 2. You're losing gear when you die and lose rank 2. And then you're at rank 1 when you die. And then you're losing gear. Like you're losing a full set of gear at 3 stacks or some shit. So just be careful. You know what I mean? Take your gear off or, you know, don't get corruption. Now, corruption, in my opinion, is by far the scariest feature in the game, and you definitely feel the penalty for this. However, if you're worried about this, don't worry. On one of the testing periods, I was like level 19 or 20, and that whole entire leveling journey, I only had corruption 1 time on accident during group PvP battle when I had that lame-ass auto attack on my wand, so when the flag player died, it jumped to a neutral player who then just watched me kill him and laughed at me. So yeah. Don't listen to people who tell you to put auto attack on as a caster. Leave it off unless you're auto attacking a mob for a long time. Just get used to controlling your wand or book attacks because they're major in this game. When it's all said and done, if you don't attack anybody, then you won't get corruption. Or attack them and just don't kill them unless they're red named, flagged, or fighting you back. I love this corruption mechanic as it griefs the griefers. Well, maybe not the level 1 griefs because I'm sure there will be plenty of people hard farming level 1s to be an asshole. Something really cool in the game is the ability to switch between tab target and action camera. As a caster, the tab targeting is much better, and for melee, the action camera is much better. There was a bug for a while that made it so if you were in tab target and targeted an enemy, you could switch to action camera while still targeting the mob, and then you could shoot your wand or bow from like 200 yards. It was mad funny, but that's been fixed. All right, so how you guys doing? You hanging in there? I told you I was a professional yapper, man. I'm not kidding. I could talk about this game all damn day, which I'll be doing tomorrow and all through the Alpha 2 testing over every weekend over at twitch.tv/Crix5s. Come stop by and ask some questions, meet some new friends. We vibe over there, dog. As soon as they bring the weekend testing servers down, I'll be making videos on the experience and start making guides the next morning. So if you don't mind, please hit that follow button if you want to see them. Let's keep pushing, boys. All right, back to the video. You know what's crazy? As much as I'm ranting on about the systems and my adventure, I can't help but think I'm forgetting something. But I hope you guys understand there's a lot of information to relay, but I promise you this is the only video that'll be this long. All the other ones will be done in nice, small, digestible videos. But for now, I'm ranting. And next, it's about the skill trees. Now, there's 3 different skill trees that all the classes have in Ashes. Your class tree, which is your talents and abilities. Your weapon tree, which drastically buffs your weapons, granting it special deadly finishers that can buff you in multiple different ways. And lastly, the universal tree, which just simply levels with you, that affects your stamina, your sprint, dodge, evasion, guard, block, and stuff like that. Starting with the class skill tree. These are your talent trees. You get 1 point every time you level that you put into your class tree, and you get new abilities and spells that you can put on your action bars. Simple enough. For example, this is the only screenshot that I could find to legally use of a mage tree. Well, now it looks nothing like this anymore. So I spent a couple hours making this, which is exactly what the mage skill tree currently looks like in game. Besides, they use like a different image on the background, and I couldn't find some of these images for the tooltips because they're new abilities, right? Anyway, the skill tree is broken down to 3 sections. The first section is what you can put your points into as soon as you hit level 2. Once you level 6, you'll then be able to put points into the middle section. And then once you level 16, you'll be able to put points into the top section. Once you unlock all the sections, you're free to put your points wherever you want. However, you need to have at least 4 points into the previous sections, meaning you can't have 0 points at this bottom section or 1 point. Like you have to have 4. You were able to do this until the other day when they pushed it to the new patch, which kind of sucks, but I expected them to do that, you know? The abilities that are in squares are spells and abilities that you cast or use, like Frostbolt, which will typically have a cooldown, and some abilities have cast times as well as some are channeled, like Lightning Strike for mages or Scattershot for rangers, where the longer you hold down the keybind, the more damage that ability will do. The abilities in circles are passives, like Fuse, which makes it so your burns do 50% more damage whenever you burn a target with the shock debuff on it. Oh, and let me touch on the debuffs because it is absolutely massive in this game. I'll be talking about them quite a bit in this section. So one of the sickest things about this game is their debuff system or their status alignments, I don't know, whatever they want to call it. As you can imagine, there's a ton of different debuffs in the game that pretty much do what you would expect them to do from any other MMO, and there's far too many to list in this video, but I'll have a video about them at some point after the testing, okay? The unique thing about debuffs in Ashes is that all classes have many spells and abilities that don't come online until a certain debuff is on the target, or some spells or abilities have additional procs if the target has certain debuffs. For example, mages have a talent called Fuse, which makes our burns, which is a debuff, do 50% more damage if the target has the shock debuff on them. Meaning before I use my Firebolt Combust combo, which is a ton of burning damage, I need to make sure that the target is shocked, which in this example would be a lightning shock or a chain lightning or a ball lightning for a mage. Every class has multiple abilities that act like this, so make sure to read the tooltips and pay attention to which debuffs you should be balancing. Anyways, these arrows let you know what spells are linked, and you must have the first talent in order to get the second. For example, this is Cone of Cold, an AoE spell that hits everything in front of you with ice and freezes any targets that already have the chill debuff on them. This ability linked to it makes your Cone of Cold push all enemies back that it hits. Each class has many examples of these, and it's been extremely fun to see what builds you can come up with. Every class also has this roll of abilities as well. I'm not sure what they call these, but you start at level 1. Then you unlock one at level 5 and 10 and so on, and these do not cost skill points. They just automatically go to your action bars when you reach the appropriate level. Some of these are really helpful, like Arcane Volley or Elemental Empowerment for a mage, but after close to 500 hours playing the game, the only time I've used this Illuminate spell was when the server was so bugged out that the game was pretty much pitch black permadark for 2 days straight, and I had to use this spell to see light around me to help us along our journey. Like, I literally had to play with that light for a day or two. It was crazy. The Ranger had some cool ones as well, like a heal and a sprint and stuff like that. Every class has their own. As for respecing, during the testing, they let us respec from our skill tree page, but there's a button on the menu that allowed it. They did say that this is only for testing purposes. I think the free respecs will be in for Alpha 2, but I'm not sure, so don't hold me to that. I really hope so, because it was really nice to be able to swap freely between my talents. You can swap talents in combat, but you cannot swap talents if it's on cooldown. But it was so nice to be able to swap from like my AoE talents to a single target or to a PvP build instantly, right? Also, if they take that out and make us respec like we normally would, we'd have to go all the way back to our node or some shit to respec, and that's going to be annoying to have to travel to and from every time I want to respec, so I really hope they let us respec in the Alpha 2. As for the other class trees, each classes have their own abilities, both some on use and passives, but I'm not going to go over each one of them in this video because this is already a long video. However, I'll be doing deep dives on each class soon on the channel where I'll go into in-depth on each of them, so make sure to follow the channel if you want to keep track of when I post them. All right, weapons. They had a decent amount of weapons in the game, and they all can be physical power rating and physical attack speed rating, or it'll be magical power rating and magical casting rating. And they obviously have shields to help with defense and tanking too. They have swords, which are one-handers, and great swords, which are two-handers. As I said, they have magical versions of these swords as well, called spell swords or great spell swords. They're short bows, long bows, wands, which are one-handers, focuses, which go in your offhand. So if you're using a one-hander, you have to have a focus in the offhand. There's also spell books, which are these super dope looking big ass books that float in front of you, right? Just shooting out all your auto attacks. It's so sick. And as mentioned, there's physical damage versions of the book as well, which doesn't make sense to me, but whatever. As for your weapon slots, you have a melee slot and a range slot. For example, as a fighter or a ranger, I'd put a great sword in my main hand and a bow in my range slot, whereas a mage would prefer a wand and a focus in their range slot and a spell sword in their melee slot with another focus, or like a great spell sword. There's tons of different variations of weapons in the game, and you'll end up just using whatever gives you the most magical physical power. All the weapon swings look great and feel strong when you swing them, and I feel like that's really important. But what makes weapons even better in this game is the weapon skill tree. This is a separate skill tree that's specifically for your weapon and changes whenever you put new weapons on. These level with their own experience bar, and when they level up, you can put a point into one of the many options that will give you additional passive skills, buffs, status conditions, heal you, give you mana, and a long list of other things. While each weapon has their own weapon tree, some weapons had the same tree while testing, and I'm not sure if it'll be the same or if they're just being lazy for the testing. But sword and great sword were the same, short bow and long bow shared, scepter and mace shared, wand and book shared. Anything that goes in your offhand like a shield or a focus did not have a weapon tree. I unfortunately have no weapon tree to show you, and it would take far too long for me to make one. So I'll just show this one that they have on their wiki page. I can tell you right now that the current wand tree looks absolutely nothing like this, but this will give you an idea. It looks way different than this. The nodes look different. The colors are different. Like, these aren't even the abilities that we get, but this will do. So on this old tree, even though it looks different than the new tree, it kind of works the same, where it levels up on a different progression bar for experience. You level up your weapon, you get 1 point. You put 1 point into something, right? Until you progress down your line. As you progress down there, you have these side things that further buff whatever the node was right before that, right? So this one is a wand hit +5. This is no longer in the game. You have a 25% chance to instead fire a beam at the target that triggers a proc. That's not in the game. This is replaced with currently something that's called a finisher, right? So you have a 25% chance to proc a finisher on your wand, right? Or all weapons have the finishers, but in this example, the wand. And then when you go over here, it gives you an option of 4 things, right? It's not these 4, this power precision thing. It's actually 3 options, and it's the 3 elemental schools of magic. So it's fire, frost, and then lightning, which that's what your finisher will proc. The 25% chance to proc the fire, lightning, or the frost, whatever you decide on your weapon, right? And then, for example, if you chose fire, it would put burn on the target for your finisher. Frost would put chilled, and then the chilled stacks to 5, which freezes the targets. And then the lightning is the shocked into volatile, right? And then these right here would buff this further to go, instead of it being a baseline 25% chance to proc the finisher, it would be 10%, 10%, 10% each stack. So that'd be 30% on top of the 25%, which is 55% to chance the burn finisher in this example. And then you have the next node be like auto shot damage 3%, 3%, 3%, or, you know, faster casting 111 or whatever it is, right? And then as you go along to the up here, it'll be another option to be like, give me mana back, give me health back, or so on and so forth. And then as you go along to that, you keep filling your tree out. It's very, very helpful, and you need to pay attention to it. But yeah, that's pretty much how weapon trees work. They're really helpful, and make sure to pay attention when you get more points. One of the main focuses on all the weapon trees is to supply you with the special finisher via the weapon combat system. Instead of just a basic auto attack that does very little damage, instead, in Ashes, your weapon tree allows you the ability to unlock multiple different finishers, which is what it sounds like, a combo finisher for whatever weapon you're using. These finishers deal more damage and can proc a plethora of things. You can make it so whenever you finish, you regain mana, health, apply multiple dots, debuffs, slows, give you more crit, armor penetration, the list goes on. Not only that, but they have all the passive nodes in that tree that buff that proc even more, making your finisher proc more often, do more damage, or echo, which means your finisher strikes twice. The synergy between your weapon tree and some of your abilities is paramount in Ashes. As a mage, I can make it so my wand finisher applies stacks of shield to the target. Upon 5 stacks, that target will then be frozen, which then allows me to hit the target with a hard-hitting shatter with my lightning strike. Or let's say I'm AoE grinding in a group. I can make my wand finishers apply volatile to the target, which is when my wand is set to lightning. That means your finishers will then chain lightning to the other targets, thus chaining the damage from your finishers and the volatile debuff, which is a 15% reduction to magical resistances, making you deal more magic damage to those targets. Once I see that finisher go off and volatile is on the pack of mobs, I can then Hoarfrost to apply chill to all the enemies and then Cone of Cold to freeze them all and then slam them with a buffed lightning strike, or even better, a super buffed chain lightning. And as of right now, you benefit from both your weapon trees regardless of which weapon you're using. For example, let's say that I'm using a wand in my range slot and a spell sword in my melee slot. I would obviously use my wand since I'm a caster, but as I gain experience, I also gain experience on both my wand and my spell sword. And when my finisher procs on my wand, which I now have talented back to fire, so it applies burning, it also procs my spell sword's finisher, which I have talented to apply bleed. Thus, when my finisher goes off, instead of just putting up that one burn, I'm putting up a hard-hitting burn and a big bleed on the target, and it will continue to stack on your next weapon finisher. I have no idea if this was intentional or if it will be in Alpha 2, but it's been in the whole time and I love it. However, it does kind of make sense that you'd have to physically hit the target with the proper weapon to get the proper finisher, but we'll find out Friday. There's regular finishers, deadly finishers, extended finishers, and even extended deadly finishers. Oh, and you can't see it now, but much like the skill tree where there's a right vertical bar, there's one of these for this tree as well, right? They start at level 5 and you get a rank of this every 5 levels. Each rank increases your accuracy by 0.5%. Also, one more thing that I forgot to mention that I think is kind of obvious, but all debuffs that everyone puts up affects each other. So you can shatter a target that was frozen by a different mage. Another example is fighters have abilities that synergize extraordinarily well with the stagger debuff, and mages can apply stagger for them so they can just go right in and crank. I personally love the weapon tree system, and it's one of my favorite systems in the game. Lastly, the third tree is a universal tree, which as of right now in the game, they're calling the stamina tree. This is a very simple tree that I cannot find a screenshot anywhere in the world of what it looks like, but it's incredibly simple. You have 3 straight vertical rows of passives that buff your stamina, dodge, guarding, and your block and stuff like that. There's absolutely nothing exciting in this tree outside of what'll be in the first left lane, which is all the passives that affect your stamina and your movement speed. The middle lane is all about dodging, and the right lane is all about blocking and guarding. Every time you level up, you get a point in this tree. This universal tree also has a little tiny passive bar thing that goes up when you level 2 like the other trees did, okay? This tree is all free and doesn't cost any points and gives you 5% sprint speed at level 5 for free and goes up 5% every 15 levels. Your stamina goes up 10 at level 10 and goes up 10 again every 20 levels as well. Well, my friends, I think that's it. I'm scared to think of what else to talk about because I'll just keep talking, but I'll part for now. I would like to leave you guys with some parting wisdom. First off, and more importantly, play the game however you want to play it. Don't let any streamers or YouTubers affect how you enjoy or not enjoy this game. There's so much toxicity surrounding the game right now after the verbal NDAs lifted, and I'm not saying that it's not deserved. All I'm saying is that don't let it deter you from enjoying this game because it is a lot of fun. But also, set your expectations low so you won't be disappointed. There will be many issues with the server stability, disconnects, and bugs. The game is nowhere close to being finished, so don't go into the game with that mindset. We're testing this game out so they can fix the issues we find. Yes, it'll be very annoying to deal with, and I'm not saying that I won't alt F4 many times, but I can promise you that if you're going into this weekend with the intent to enjoy yourself and have fun immersing into this insanely large world, then you're going to have a blast. If you start playing the game and the game is unplayable to you and you're starting to hate it, give it a break and come back in a couple weekends when they fix the servers more, you know? I can attest that Intrepid has been doing a really good job at bringing servers down and back up to fix things, and I'm sure as the weekend tests go by, the game will get smoother and smoother. If you're thinking about buying Alpha 2 Access, wait a bit and watch your favorite streamer or YouTuber for the first couple weekends, and then you'll be able to see if you want to play the game or not, or if the servers are stable enough for you, okay? Lastly, do your research. There's a lot to learn about this game, and we know a lot about it, but we still don't know everything, okay? For every class, there will be a YouTuber coming out of the woodworks to try and make guides on the class, myself included. There will be a ton of nonsense guides that people will make, and there will be some excellent ones that people will make. In any manner, take these guides with a grain of salt, including mine. This game is constantly being updated, and things are changing a lot. I will, of course, update you guys with follow-up videos when things change after I make a video about something, but you know, not everyone does that. So be careful when consuming content and make sure it's a trustworthy content creator. And to close out the video while we're on the topic, I wanted to name a few that I think are really good and have actual insight on the game, are playing the game, and are super passionate about the game. They're not out here to make a quick buck. They're actually knowledgeable and passionate about the game. And I appreciate that on a content creator, right? I feel like this is important because people who played the game are always better to get information from than people relaying information from other people that did it themselves. Does that make sense? So yeah, I just want to list a few people here that I trust. If you're watching this and you make content on Ashes and I didn't list you, I probably just haven't seen a video of yours, or I have and your videos are ass. I have no idea. There's so much shit content on the game out there right now because everyone is trying to do the same fucking thing. Oh my God, NDA's lifted her. Let's all make the same quick video saying the same shit that everyone else is saying. Super unoriginal. Anyway, that's why these guys are my favorites, because they're not doing that, right? Starting with Nice Gaming. He gets the first nod simply because this man is 1,000 videos made on this game over the years. And that is some pure dedication, bro. Nice has also done a massive amount of testing himself, and I believe is the only content creator who's been no-lifing a tank, but I'm not sure on that one. Either way, he makes some good content. The next person is probably the smartest person in the Ashes world, and that's Rive Genesis. He's been around the scene for a while now, and at this point is still the only content guy whose video I actually watched on stream. I've had the pleasure of talking with him a couple times, and he seems like a really nice guy, and he also knows the world well and is very passionate when it comes to this game. This man is my go-to for any theory crafting when it comes to the nerdy stuff. Definitely go check him out immediately. The next person is Richie SH. He's easily one of my favorite Ashes creators who covers pretty much everything about the game, even down to the other classes. I also know that he's been no-lifing testing and is extremely knowledgeable in that aspect, which is what I appreciate a lot about it too. He's not just going on there and babbling about the testing when he hasn't been testing or some shit, you know? I've been really enjoying his videos lately since NDA is lifted as well, because every day he's been posting what's changed and whatnot per topic. And while I know most of what he's talking about in the videos because I was also testing it, he explains the things I don't know very well about, and it's easy to understand. I can see this guy dominating guides and Ashes. Next is Vladis. While he of course makes the same kind of news updates as they all do, he adds his own bit of flavor in how he delivers it, and I really appreciate that. He also has videos that are much more niche to the game that nobody else has. And last, but far from least, my favorite, the infamous Narkiverse. Whether you love him or hate him, Narc has been carrying Ashes content with close to a whopping 700 videos about Ashes over the last 4 years, and is by far the most consistent Ashes content creator, okay? Like his entire stream, for as long as I can remember, was like a little bit of hardcore WoW, and then straight into Ashes of Creation for the past like 3 or 4 years. He like literally, his stream is sitting in Ashes of Creation category, reacting and talking about the game. He incorporates a ton of jokes and humor in all his videos, as well as some of the best production I've seen out of anybody else too. Definitely check him out if you're looking for some no filter, no bullshit, absolutely based Ashes content, okay? Now, I don't agree with every opinion that they all have, but they are exactly that, opinions, and we all have our own takes on the game. These guys are the trustworthy ones in my opinion. I've been following them all for years, and I love their constant game updates, and I use them to keep me up to date with the game until I started testing it myself. Well, let me end this video before I start ranting about something else, okay? This is a long-ass video. I'm at 3 hours right now on the recording of this script. Obviously, it won't be that long in the video because I'll cut it down, but holy, that's crazy, huh? I doubt anybody stuck around for the entire video. But if you did stick around and you're at this part of the video, go leave a comment below and say Batman is ass. And while you're there, hit that thumbs up and like the video if you don't mind on the way out. I hope this video gave some insight on my adventures, and I hope there was some sense to be made from such a long video. I'll see you guys on Friday when we start Alpha 2. I'll make a video Monday morning to talk about it. Peace.